Welcome to a new series where I get extremely angry about problems in football that are depressingly unlikely to change, and where better to start than with the newest addition to the modern game, VAR. I want to discuss why VAR doesn't work practically and why it doesn't fit football as a sport anyway. I'll also, as a regular segment for this series, suggest realistic solutions to the problem and also an ideal solution. First, we should start with how VAR actually works. After several domestic competitions tested VAR, it made its major debut at the 2018 World Cup, and the way it was implemented then hasn't really varied since. VAR can only interject in penalty, goal and red card decisions. If an on-field decision is believed to be incorrect, then the VAR official will notify the on-field referee. If the decision is based off an offside, then the decision will be made from the VAR room. Otherwise, the on-field referee will be asked to review the incident on a screen by the side of the pitch. Pretty simple, right? A way to utilise technology to take some pressure off officials. Well, now we've had VAR for a few seasons, it's become quite obvious that it's only heaped more pressure onto referees who are already held to fairly unrealistic standards. Inconsistency could be excused when refereeing in the heat of the moment, but somehow referees are still struggling to enforce laws identically from game to game. Let's look at an example. This season, the FA outlined how they wanted officials to be more lenient with physical contact to allow the game to flow and address the issue that games were becoming too stop-start. They weren't big enough to admit VAR itself was a bigger contributor to this, but oh well, I guess it's something. So it made sense that Douglas Luiz's goal against Arsenal was allowed to stand despite Boubacar Kamara jostling with Aaron Ramsdale. What doesn't make sense is why Newcastle were denied a goal on review due to an innocuous collision between Willock and Gaeta. So what's the point I'm trying to make? Well, it doesn't matter how passionate us fans get about how obvious a decision is. The fact of the matter is, the majority of laws in football are open to interpretation, so it's impossible to get consistent refereeing no matter how long they stare at a screen on the side of the pitch. So in reality, VAR is now leaving referees unprotected as they are expected to be infallible due to the technology at their disposal. Well, what about offsides, I hear you ask? They're clear cut. You're either offside or onside. Well, two things. The technology doesn't exist to pinpoint the exact moment the ball is played, which is relevant when VAR is being used to rule out goals due to extremely tight offsides. In one frame the ball hasn't been kicked, the next frame the ball already has been kicked. The other thing is, can you seriously say that a player having a toenail or a shoulder beyond the last man is gaining enough of an unfair advantage to rule out a goal? Everton were denied a vital 3 points and a well-earned memorable Derby Day win because Conor Coady's shoulder was slightly ahead of the ball. Are you telling me Liverpool are incapable of defending this goal because Coady is leaning forward? Some serious limbs were halted because of this decision, which actually brings me to my next point. Even if VAR was guaranteed to be completely flawless and every decision caused absolutely no controversy whatsoever, I still wouldn't want it in the game. Constant correct decisions is not worth the sacrifice of having constant delays in the game, especially if those delays take place after goals. When your team scores a goal, the rush of adrenaline is something that cannot be replicated. If I think back to some of the most exciting and important goals I've witnessed in person, my memory blanks out for about 5 seconds. I have no memory of what foolish thing I was doing. But VAR doesn't allow you to have those mad 5 seconds. You have to reel it in while some nerd watches some replays. And when a goal is eventually cleared, you don't get that rush of unbridled joy, you get a fairly tame sensation of relief, or if it's ruled out, bitter disappointment. If VAR was around when I was growing up, I don't think I would have been able to fall in love with football the way I have. VAR is yet another example of the people at the top of football moulding the sport for a TV audience to chase the money that comes with appeasing the TV companies. All this huff about it actually improving officiating standards is complete bollocks. We've seen enough in just 1 month this season to know that. In fact, we saw it all in one weekend. Remember that Newcastle goal I used earlier? That happened the same day that West Ham had a late equaliser ruled out for Jarrod Bowen's boot brushing Edouard Mendy. On Match of the Day that evening, Alan Shearer suggested the issue lies with the officials rather than the technology, and Danny Murphy put forward the idea of more ex-pros becoming referees. This does suggest that ex-pros would somehow be less controversial, which I guess makes sense when you consider that every pundit that is an ex-pro is considered oracles of knowledge and who are loved and respected across the country. Although I somewhat agree with the motion that having people who actually played football refereeing would improve officiating, it wouldn't make enough of a difference to suddenly make VAR okay. The issue isn't that there are mistakes, there's always been mistakes. The issue is that the mistakes happen just as much as before VAR, with the additional kick in the balls of having to wait 2 minutes for a decision to be made. And I realise I've repeated this point now about having to wait, and it may seem like quite a trivial thing to be wound up about if you don't like football regularly, but trust me, 2 minutes drags when literally nothing is happening. Seriously, put a 2-minute timer on your phone right now, pause this video and do nothing but stare at a wall for 2 minutes. See, not very fun. So what realistically could we expect to see for this situation to improve? Well, maybe the answer lies with replicating other sports with video assistant officials. For example, being able to hear the communications between officials is standard in other sports and looks the most likely progression of VAR. Other more effective remedies might include a review system like in cricket that would see each team have a set amount of reviews, and either the captain or manager of each team could signal to the referee that they wish for VAR to be consulted. I like this. It shifts some of the scrutiny away from referees onto teams to use their reviews wisely. And if they burn their reviews, they might just begin to appreciate how tough the referee's job actually is. Or, a more practical solution that wouldn't require too much of an overhaul would be a timer on how long a VAR review can last. We were told that VAR was only for clear and obvious errors, so I don't think anyone needs longer than a minute to make a decision if it is truly clear and obvious. Both of these solutions would at least address the excruciating delays that have been killing Premier League games for the last few seasons, and would respect the free-flowing nature of the game much more than the current system. But there is one way to fix all the problems that VAR brings. Get rid of it. If you can't see that football has got significantly worse as a direct result of VAR, then I would like to invite you to your local branch of Specsavers. You can even bring your guide dog if you like. Look, FA, Premier League, it's okay, we all make mistakes. Just admit that VAR was a mistake and get rid of it. We won't blame you. You can't have seen this coming. No one could have, apart from all the people that said it would be awful from the start. But let's ignore that. Please, please, please get rid of VAR. It'll be a step towards avoiding the slow and painful death of football.